Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, continuing on with the top 10 list of the best episodes of the In a Crowded Room podcast. Coming in at number 5 is episode number 55, which, if you're a fan of Paranormal State, you do not want to miss this episode, as I share with you guys a ton of information about the absolute insanity that took place during the Good vs. Evil episode, which just so happened to also be the first episode that I ever took part in. And believe it or not, the entire episode was nearly canceled. To find out why and much more, enjoy episode number 55 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast for episode number 55. I'm going to expound upon a question that I was asked, which is, how did I get onto Paranormal State? How was I chosen? And also, I'm going to talk about the first episode, because a lot of really crazy things happened on that episode, in which it's my firm belief that I could have just as easily been never seen again or never seen, period, on Paranormal State, because the first episode that I was on almost never happened. So let's start with how I got on the show. Actually, I had made a documentary called Paranormal, which was a documentary about the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, in which myself and 9 of my skeptical friends spent a number of nights in Waverly Hills, in which the goal was to simply bring a bunch of skeptics in and see how long it took them to become believers, and if they would in fact spend the entire amount of allotted time at Waverly Hills. And this documentary was released for free on YouTube, and it did extremely well. That is how I met Ryan. And somebody in his group, somebody in PRS, had sent it on to him, in which he initially contacted me about attending his UnivCon. He used to do a big paranormal festival at Penn State. That was the first time I had ever spoken to Ryan. And that first time that he contacted me, I couldn't do it, because I was actually working on a different project called Rising. I mentioned this before. It was a big name project with Steven Spielberg, and I was under contract to not appear anywhere unless I had the Rising colors on, basically the Rising jacket, and the show was not out yet, so we were not in promotional mode. So I could not attend the first UnivCon, but Ryan and I stayed in contact slowly, and just kind of, became friends naturally. Now, for season 1, I was filming Rising, while Ryan and PRS was filming Paranormal State. So there wasn't really an opportunity for me to be a part of season 1. When season 2 came around, there was a lot of business things that sidelined Rising, in which I was under contract for 18 months, and we were not filming, but they also wouldn't let me go do anything else, which was a painful process, because I did want to be a part of Paranormal State. The show, I thought, was wacky as can be, and there were some things I didn't get about it initially. And I told Ryan that as well. I said, at first I did not understand what you guys were trying to accomplish. But eventually I got it. And what I liked was the family aspect of it. I really loved that they got into the lives of the people that were haunted. Coming from a family that dealt with that stuff, that was really enticing to me. And the fact that it just looked good. It was visually leagues beyond any other paranormal show that was out there. It wasn't just tripods and night vision, It was an actual documentary series. So eventually I was able to convince the fine folks at Rising that this would be a positive thing for our series, and that if I went on Paranormal State that I would in fact wear the Rising logo, which Annie approved as well, knowing that it would be certainly not a bad thing for them to have somebody that was on a Spielberg show appear on their show. But that doesn't mean that the episode that I was on would ever see the light of day or that I would ever get another chance, because as many of you know, Ryan had his bullpen of kind of revolving psychics. But when it came to investigators, I think throughout the entire 6 seasons, there was close to 24 or 25 guest investigators, and none of them had stuck beyond one episode. So when I went into filming the first episode, when I was invited, I wasn't really thinking at all that it would go past the first episode, because it hadn't for anybody else in the first season. So why would I think that it would be anything beyond a one-off? Now, at that time, Ryan and I were becoming closer and closer friends. We had hung out a few times. He had come to one of my events. I think I had gone to maybe one of his. And yeah, like I said, eventually the time was right. It was about midway through the second season. And he said, I have a case that I would like you to join us on if you can make it work. So I was able to make it work, like I said. And the case was in New Jersey. It was a really interesting case. I was told that it was a demonic case, potentially. So, at that time, I was, not necessarily certain as to how I felt about the demonic, whether it was real or not, or I shouldn't say real because I believed in evil, but I didn't and couldn't and still can't wrap my head around the idea of, legions and minions and, multiple names and, all the stuff that kind of goes along with Catholicism. And I knew the show was heavy in Catholicism. So the first step was to just let everybody know that I wasn't going to be a part of anything religious, which is kind of weird if you think about it, because Paranormal State was such a religion-heavy show. To be invited to do an episode and the first thing you say is, hey, I'm not going to be a part of anything religious, after I had already told Ryan that I didn't really like the show when it first came out. So it was kind of weird that I still got the invite. But I think Ryan was trying to stir things up and just keep, a revolving door of fresh faces. And I think I was the next fresh face. And I could truly say I went into the episode thinking that it'll be a one-off. And I wasn't even sure that I would want to do another episode, because I also made it clear before I ever showed up that I do not fake things. I will not fake things. And if I see people faking things, I'm going to out everybody, So I felt comfortable because Ryan knew that and had no problem with it and was like, come on in, no problem. So I was like, cool. They know how I roll. I feel good about that. So let's go do it. So I showed up to the case, and I didn't know what psychic was going to be there. I didn't know anything about it other than it was in New Jersey. And when I first showed up, I was excited by who was there as far as the cast, because I still didn't know who the psychic was going to be. But Katrina was there, Chatty was there, Serge was there, and the crew was really cool to me. Everybody was very nice. The word had kind of spread about the Rising show and the Spielberg connection because they had just done some planted press. So I think that kind of helped my landing, because the same day I was there, the head of the entire network was there, and also Betsy Schechter, who was one of the most powerful executive producers of Paranormal State, also happened to be there as well. So I did kind of think, if I do really well here, maybe I'll catch their eye or catch their attention, and maybe, they'll have me back for maybe one more episode. But, you can't bank on that because you just don't know what's going to happen. Well, right after I landed, the first thing that I hear is there's not going to be an episode because the clients have backed out. And I'm like, oh shit, you're kidding me. And everybody's like, no. And I'm like, well, what's the deal? Well, from what I was told, and this happens, I don't want to say a lot, but it happens at least 2 or 3 times a season. When the crews show up, it kind of hits the clients that this is a big deal and it's going to be released to the world. And I completely understand how they can maybe not foresee that when they first write into A&E or into PRS to say, we need help. Can you come help us? When you say, yeah, we'll come there and shoot a television show. If you don't know how television shows are made and you just watch Paranormal State, it just seems like there's a person running around with the camera following everything. Not that there's, a full production crew and grip trucks and lighting trucks and the whole neighborhood knows that you're filming, right? There's just a lot goes on in film production, and that's usually intimidating to clients, and I understand why. And then usually once they absorb the fact that this is going to be a bigger deal than they thought, they start thinking now about the reality of every single person I know is going to see this. From childhood friends to acquaintances of acquaintances. Trust me, you have no idea what it's like when you're featured on a show until it happens. And that was something that I knew was coming. And it happened to me too. I mean, believe me, friends of friends of friends that I never knew were messaging me going, remember when we hung out? Right up to family members I didn't even know that I had, to ex-girlfriends, to the last guy I got in a fight with in high school, who I couldn't even stand when I was around him, ended up getting a hold of me as well after I appeared on the episode. That's just part of it. Like, everybody in your life that trust me, they're going to see it or hear about it. And I think the clients, that kind of hits them all of a sudden. And the husband in this case had a professional job, and I believe it was in money management of some kind. Either he was an accountant or he was an investor or something, but he dealt with money, other people's money. And I think it just hit him that, wow, this could have an adverse effect on my career, because people may just think I'm crazy and not want to deal with me. And do I want to show up and deal with that? Totally understandable. I totally get it. I totally understand. I would be thinking the same thing, but I would think it through, obviously, before I got a film crew there, because now you're just burning money. It cost around $400,000 to shoot one episode of Paranormal State. So once we arrive, we are burning cash. So needless to say, when a client backs out, this is the worst scenario that a production company can face, because no matter what, the crew's getting paid, period. So they're just burning cash. They are burning cash, and they only have so many episodes, and they have to deliver those episodes to A&E. And how it works is they deliver the episodes, then they get paid, okay? So not only are they burning cash, they're burning cash out of their pocket first, right? Then they get the money from A&E. So if they burn cash all day long and the client just stonewalls them and they can't turn in that episode, they're just out that cash. So it's a real quick way for a production company to lose $250,000 in a day, So, yeah, it's a bad situation. And even if you can get them to say yes, you want to get them to say yes as fast as you can, because the crew is still on the clock, meaning if it takes them until 6 p.m. at night, for example, we only have 6 hours now to make that day. And that's a 12-hour day, right? So the rest of the day, everybody's getting paid. We're just sitting around in a car waiting to see if we're going to do this until it's time for lunch. And then catering gets set up and everyone goes and eats. And so it's kind of this race to get things going. And you can't be too pushy, obviously, because the client could just go, don't like your attitude. Get the fuck off my property. You know what I mean? So it's a really, really tough situation. And typically speaking, in my opinion, the worst people to talk to clients are producers, because by nature, they're just really, they're fast. They talk fast, they move fast. That's the job of a producer, to solve problems really quickly. And sometimes it's a lot better to bring a cast member in, or somebody who can understand the client a little more, somebody who's dealt with the paranormal. Because I can tell you right now, these producers, they don't give a shit about the paranormal. They don't know anything about the paranormal. They don't care about the paranormal. It's not even real to them. They're there to try to push a story onto film. So when the client's talking about paranormal stuff, you don't want the person that doesn't care sitting across from them. So after the producers tried all morning long, eventually Ryan spent some time with the clients, and I heard, okay, it's back on. And this was right around lunchtime. And I'm going, okay, so we are shooting. And in the meantime, they're also setting up a backup case. They're looking how close is the closest person, where if we had to go somewhere tomorrow and make a whole episode out of 1 to 2 days shooting, could we do it? So all this madness is going on at once. And I'm starting to think we're probably not going to film this. We're really probably not. So what a waste of time. I flew all the way out to New Jersey, and that was it. And the first episode that I did, the first 3 episodes that I did actually were for free, which I don't even think is legal. But they paid for plane tickets, hotel room, and gave some ridiculous per diem. It was like $15 or something. Like you couldn't, besides going to the gas station, I don't know what you could live on for, $15 or fast food or some shit, like the dollar menu or something. It was really, really bad. But I hear it's going on. We're moving forward. Okay. So we have lunch and we're getting ready to shoot, and I hear, okay, it's off again. I'm like, oh, Jesus, this thing's definitely done. It's not happening. So they basically set a marker where they're going to have to pull the plug if it's not done by a certain time. If memory serves me correctly, it was 2 p.m. And right before 2 p.m., I hear, okay, the clients are in. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we're going to go ahead and start the case. So they start doing the interviews with the family members, and I'm not involved in that because I'm there purely to aid in capturing evidence because, my stance that I don't want to be involved in anything religious kind of removes me from a lot of things that I could do because the family is devout Roman Catholic. And there's rosary beads everywhere in the house. There's, all the photos of the classical, white Jesus with the long brown hair, and there's crucifixes everywhere. And I'm cool with it, again, but I'm just not sure with where I stand. So I just felt like to involve myself in that stuff when I don't know that I believe in it is disrespectful to them. And I did not want to be disrespectful to them. So at this point, I know we're shooting, but it still doesn't involve me in any way. So I'm just chilling, just waiting for dead time to come. So eventually they get to the psychic walkthrough, which I hear it's going to be a psychic named Kim Russo, which many of you may know her. She's had a couple shows since then, but she never appeared on the episode. When you guys watch the episode, you will see that it is Chip Coffey who appears on the episode. Well, what happened is Kim Russo flew in on the first night and got off the plane, drove to set, went inside to meet Ryan, and said something offensive to Ryan right away, like, unbunch your underwear up your butt or something like that. It was something that really pissed him off. And as quick as she came, he bounced her off that set. She was gone. So I'm like going, wow, does this always run like this? So not only do we start really late, the psychic that just flew in, I think from New Orleans, literally got in her car, drove to set, and within 20 minutes was kicked off the set and was on her way back to the airport. So there was no psychic walkthrough the first night. We went straight into the investigation, in which I ended up walking through some big field and looking for these lights that they said they saw on the field, and nothing happened. It was the most boring, uneventful dead time that I'd ever been a part of, and I thought it would be because we're walking through an open air field in which, there's all the sounds of an open air field. There's insects, bugs, all this stuff. And there's total contamination. And unless some massive bright light started hovering off the ground that we can film, there was just nothing that was going to be found out there. And I prefer investigations when they're indoor because there's a multitude of activity that can be recorded if things are locked down versus outdoor in the open air. So day 2 comes, and that's when I hear Chip Coffey has been contacted, which I know Chip. I've known Chip for years at that point, and Chip was on his way. So I'm excited about that because I'm comfortable around Chip. I feel comfortable around everybody on, the set at this point. But as far as my role, I've been a complete non-factor. They could have, stuck a tripod in my place and it would have done just as well. So there was really no reason for me to be there at this point. And, to be honest, I'm kind of resigned to the fact that it's going to be a free weekend to see some friends, and I'm cool with that. That's fine. If I don't, wind up on a frame of the episode, that's fine. It was a good time. I never really looked further than that. So we have dead time after Chip does his walkthrough. We have a dead time in the basement in which I'm downstairs and I'm sitting in the corner of this basement. And the reason they sent me down there is the clients claimed that there was a portal to hell, some kind of spiritual portal of evil in the basement. So I go down and I'm sitting in the corner of the basement, and the stairs out of the basement are right in front of me. And as I'm down there, after about, I think it's probably maybe 30 minutes of being down there, it starts getting really weird. It's hard to explain what I saw unless you've experienced it, but it's kind of like when darkness gets darker. It like becomes it goes from black to like jet black. Where you can't see your hand in front of your face. And this was happening in different areas of the basement. And I've experienced this before, and typically this means something's fixing to go down. And I'm down there, and all of a sudden, there is this really loud growl. And it's so loud that it's heard through my IFB. Now, what my IFB is I'm wearing a microphone. We all are, okay? And then we have an IFB in our ear. And what that does, it allows us to hear everybody who's talking. So like I could hear the conversations going on upstairs. I can hear the director, the producer, all of that stuff. It's just a good way to kind of keep the production together so we all know what's going on. Well, this growl was so loud, it was picked up through my microphone, and everybody heard it on the IFB. And right as that happened, I freaked out. I was so freaking scared inside, but I didn't move. I just sat there. And all I said was, "There's something down here, bro." That line, "There's something down here, bro." Now that would come back later on. I'll explain why. So I was just letting people know, yeah, there's something down here. And it was scary. And then the growl happened again, and it was even louder, in which I just sat there, trying to look like a badass. Now, what's funny is when you watch the scene, That's how it appears. Like I'm just being growled at and I'm stone cold and I don't move. Truth be told, I was terrified. The reason I didn't run out of the room and run up the stairs to get out of there is because the growl came from the stairs. So I would have had to run through the growl to get out of the room, to get out of the basement. So eventually Ryan and Chip come downstairs, and it was a classic scene, probably one of the more memorable ones in the whole series. It's when Chip's downstairs and he's sitting on the stairs, and I go walking by Chip, and Ryan is following this darkness that I'm talking about. And this toolbox on its own came off this side nail that it was hanging on, twisted and slammed back into the wall. And we were just, man, we were amped. I mean, talk about being on 11. It was a tremendous dead time. And it ended up being, one of the best of the season. So when the whole thing is over, I'm feeling, really different about this. I'm like, wow, well, that was pretty cool. And there was some natural chemistry between Chip and myself and Ryan. And I thought there would be, because Ryan and I always had a natural chemistry that totally worked. His personality is just so different than mine, but it works. And Chip and I both have big personalities, but Chip has his own unique thing going on. And we've always kind of worked as far as our personalities go, because we're just, again, very different, even though we're both kind of loud. But all three of us together really worked. And I remember thinking this was special. Like if I was watching it as a fan, I'd be like, that combo works, So, the investigation's over. I had a great time. I had a blast with everybody. And I went home. It was a couple weeks later in which they had started to run some early teasers for the season, right? They're cranking it out, And in the very first teaser, the main teaser for the whole season, they put me in it. And the main, slug line for the whole season, when the Paranormal State graphic comes up, you just hear, "There's something down here, bro." And that ended up becoming, the slogan for the season. Now, I was very, very lucky and very, very fortunate that first episode went that direction. Had it not, I don't know that I would have ever been on Paranormal State again. But since it did go as well as it did, and since they used, there's something down here, bro, as their slogan, I pretty much knew at that point that they wanted me to come back for more episodes. Well, after Ryan invited me to the second episode, I had heard there were 7 episodes left, and that's when Gary, who's the other executive producer at Go Go Lucky out here in Los Angeles, because there was one executive producer in New York, that was Betsy, and Gary was the LA executive producer. And the show was cut out here, and Gary's company did the cutting. That's when Gary invited me to his office, and he said, "Look, there's 7 more episodes left, and then Paranormal State's done. That's a wrap." And I was like, well, that's a bummer, I mean, I like the show. I didn't want it to end. And what he said to me is that episode you did with Chip and Ryan, Good versus Evil, came out great. We need more of that. Whenever Ryan invites you to a case, let it fly. We want to see as much personality out of you as you can. And we're going to push him to get you on more episodes and, make the best of it, because when this 7's up, it's up. And, maybe if we could make enough noise, maybe we'll get a few more episodes. I ended up doing, I think it was 4 episodes of the final 7. And we ended up getting picked up for another 4 seasons after that. So it was great. It worked out awesome. I'm very thankful to Ryan and Gary and the network for giving me a chance. I'm I'm extremely thankful to all of you guys because A&E does an immense amount of research and data and collecting data as to who works and who responds well to the public. And I was very, very fortunate that you guys enjoyed me on the show. And I enjoyed being on the show. And I always felt like I was a guest there. I always felt like I was a guest on Paranormal State, even when I had moved up to directing it, even when I was on episodes all the time. It was never my baby. I didn't start it. I didn't create it. I always treated it like it was somebody else's golden egg. And if it was put in my hands, I was going to get it across the river. I was going to make sure that I did my best. And every time I showed up, man, I was there to kick as much ass as I could and try to make the best out of it. And, I'm proud of what Paranormal State did. And I thank you guys for maintaining the hype and excitement because Paranormal State still runs every year. That's the weird thing. People always say to me, so when are you going to go back to TV and are you going to? And I'm open, to the right project. But what's funny is I'm on TV. I'm on TV every year. Paranormal State will run again nonstop this year on at least 2 to 3 channels during the October Halloween season. It's been syndicated. It currently runs in I want to say 29 different countries. And that's pretty weird. The first time I went to London, I landed in London and went to get a pack of cigarettes, and the person at the cigarette stand took a photo with me and asked for an autograph, and he was a Paranormal State fan, which was crazy. When I went to Italy, I got to watch Paranormal State, in which it was hilarious. My voice that they gave me, it sounded like that Les Poissons French guy in Little Mermaid, like "Les Poissons, Les Poissons," whoever they had do my voice, it was very and that was cool. When I was over there, I was taking photos and signing autographs, and it was such a bizarre experience to be in Venice, Italy, watching Paranormal State. So it's cool. It's something that's going to last forever. Paranormal State definitely has that X-Files-ish fan base that just doesn't go anywhere. They're just there. And I think that's probably the coolest part about being on Paranormal State. So that's the story, guys. That's how the first episode went down. That's how I got on the show. It was just a lot of things happened at once. And I think hard work and preparation collided with fate and destiny, and that's just how it happened. So I want to thank all of you guys again for being awesome fans of it. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I appreciate the question. And, I hope you guys enjoy the kind of behind the scenes on these episodes. If you do, let me know in the comments below. And like I said, I can keep doing these. I enjoy talking about it. So if you guys like these behind the scenes podcast, let me know in the comments below. And also, one more time, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast or any of the other podcasts, please let at least 10 people know about the show and ask them to subscribe and send them an episode and tell them you like the In a Crowded Room podcast and you're just sharing it with them. That's easy enough, right? And again, we're just going to kind of do an experiment here to see how this goes in the short run. And that's that. So thank you all once again for listening to episode number 55 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.